Hey there, welcome to our first Hadera user interview. We're going to start making some short videos showcasing some of the projects being built in the community, as well as hopefully letting them share some of the challenges and insights that they've learned about building decentralized applications. I'm Cooper, a software developer at Hadera Hashgraph. You can probably find me on Twitter or see me at your local meetup. And today I'm very excited to have with us David Cohen, who is from Taekion, a decentralized software pioneer. He's been working on decentralized software for about 25 years, and he was a super early advisor to the Hashgraph team before it even became Hadera. And we're super excited to hear from him and what he's working on.
Thanks, Cooper. I'm glad to be here. Wanted to talk a little bit about how my company that I founded, I'm a co-founder and CEO of Taekion, which is a pure play software company. And I want to talk about how we're working with Hadera Hashgraph and some other areas around use cases. So Taekion is a pure play software platform that is an enterprise dual blockchain platform that allows us to build what we call secure, trusted networks. So we're kind of a networking company as well as a software company. And our platform has got some game-changing patented technology around areas of what we call moving target defense, where we're actually changing things based on time, and we're moving things around to confuse attackers. And we build a secure foundational layer. So we have two blockchains. One is a security blockchain that we log everything onto a high-speed immutable blockchain. That's our own blockchain. And then we have all that immutability and all that trust and all that ability to provide digital black box forensics for the life cycle of any type of network that we're building this around. And then we also build in artificial intelligence and transactive capabilities, and we're working with Hadera because on our Transactive blockchain, our TKX token is going to be based on Hadera Hashgraph. So how does it work? So what we do is we have this core, which is this high-speed security blockchain where everything is logged onto a blockchain for immutability and trust. And then we have a network level piece. We have something called rotating packet services. It's a patent that allows us to take any communications between different types of computer nodes on a network. Anytime there's any change, anybody tries to tamper or do anything to manipulate the data, we're going to drop that packet. So that second green line is where we get into the networking layer with some of our patented technology, but it also is where our token called our TKX, which is the Transactive token, is where this would be running Hadera. That's why it says powered by Hadera Hashgraph over in the left corner. So the third piece of this on the networking side is we have a very powerful patent that allows us to literally cloak the network and make all the IP addresses disappear. So again, back to the tagline, secure, trusted networks. With Hadera Hashgraph, we're now able to build even more security and into the ability to send payments back with the digital wallet and do microtransactions. So that's a very, very high level view.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
So our token architecture, because we have two blockchains, we have a security blockchain over on the top left, and we have a transactive blockchain. So the purpose of the TKI token is a non-fungible token that's like an SSL certificate. It allows us to determine which nodes are running our Taekion profile and protocol. And then we use the TKX token, the transactional token with the smart contract, to do things where we're transacting with a digital wallet. So the diagram is pretty complicated, but there's a whole series of things that we do to wind up the dual blockchain architecture, launch them, and then what you see there is the TKX token called the transaction blockchain, which is running Hadera. So that's a 50,000-foot view of what we do. I'd like to dive into a little bit about the security blockchain. So if an example would be an industrial control system. This could be a nuclear power plant. Over on the right, you've got some kind of HMI, human-machine interface. You've got an ability, it could be a cell phone, it could be a computer. It's communicating with a control system, and it may be actually turning things on and off of that control system. Where we do with the blockchain is we're first protecting all of the computer nodes themselves, making sure that everything is not being tampered, everything is being logged. We're creating a digital black box forensics just in case something does go wrong, but we're also defending against all different types of cybersecurity attacks on the nodes. We're very unique because we're protecting the computers underneath the apps that are running like a blockchain. So everybody thinks blockchain is 100% secure. We're locking down the computers and the blockchain. So in this case, if a packet does get tampered with, what you see with that dotted orange line is we're going to drop that packet and say somebody has tried to compromise this. This should be really important in a scenario where an autonomous vehicle was going down the road and someone spoofed the LiDAR sensor and the car crashed off the road. So we think in terms of our market as being mission critical, privacy critical, and life critical. So how does Hadera Hashgraph fit into this whole thing specifically? So let's talk about a transactive energy grid. So you've got all these different types of distributed energy resources, electric vehicle chargers, solar systems, batteries, all these new distributed energy devices that are integrating with the traditional centralized electric utility grid. All these are devices. They can all be protected with our system. And what you see here is different types of transactive grid assets, things I mentioned, smart meters, generators, capacitor banks, relays, switches, all the things that make the electric grid highly reliable, which is something that we're very proud of, that it is reliable, but we want to now integrate and make it more reliable and integrate lots and lots of distributed, decentralized energy assets. So what we do now is we use the Taekion, the blue line, to basically create this secure, enabled, tamper-proof network that's on the devices themselves, so that devices cannot be hacked. Now we look at building a wallet capability, a digital wallet, enabling microtransactions with the Hadera. So the green lines represent Hadera being used to basically transact and create a smart electric grid. I spent 25 years pioneering electric grid software. My last project that I built was called Grid Agents. We were doing most of the things we're looking at here, but what we were missing is the trust layer. We didn't have the ability to really trust and have a blockchain-enabled cybersecurity platform, as well as something like Hadera that can do this autonomous, smart contract-enabled transactive grid. So this is very powerful, and this has kind of been from the beginning why we're working with Hashgraph. We're also working on many, many other types of use cases in areas of defense with the U.S. Army, with the Department of Defense. We're working in areas of healthcare. We're working actually in areas which is Hashgraph is doing. We believe there's a lot of intrinsic value of applying our Taekion protocols underneath financial systems. So banking, all different types of areas around fintech as well. So that is, I would say, a very, very fast kind of ride through through the use case of how we're using Hadera Hashgraph. What we would do with our tokens is we would essentially have our TKX token being a Hadera Hashgraph derivative, and we've been very stealth in our building of our company so far. So we've been very private. We probably will be doing some type of STO offering in the future, but right now we're really busy building patents, building technology, working on proof of concepts, working with customers. We are working with the U.S. Department of Energy, which has been press released with Hadera. We're working with the U.S. Army. We're working with some other customers, even in the fintech space. So I don't know where we are on time, but that's kind of a quick synopsis of our technology. I'll stop there.
That's all super exciting, David. I really love hearing about what you're doing. You know, this dual blockchain architecture is super interesting. And I'd like to just spend a little time talking maybe about that and a little bit about implementation, maybe some general questions about Hadera. And I would also love to hear a bit more about your users and the people actually using your technology. Could you speak a little bit about the deal with the Department of Energy, I believe it is, you said, that was press released with us?
Yeah, so we won a contract, what I call it, it's innovation capital to build out for national security purposes the ability to use our technology to protect power plants and smart grids. So anything from a nuclear power plant down to a solar array on your roof. And so we're in phase 2 of that project, and that's a phase 2 SBIR. And we're actually working directly with the DOE right now with stakeholders. We're going to be speaking in Pittsburgh at a national energy conference to basically find more customers that we can do proof of concepts with around this. And this is on a commercialization path, but we're also working with other types of customers in other industries. But that's how we started, based on a peer-reviewed Department of Energy grant to basically build out this platform.
Wow, that's very exciting. And it's, the idea of having kind of a black box security audit, as well as, this immutable trail of logs and security analysis, combined with, Hadera's ability to make real-time micropayments seems very powerful. What would you say is kind of like the biggest value add you could provide to someone like the Department of Energy or the Department of Defense?
So, as you know, the electric grid supports everything in the world, and it's a mission-critical infrastructure. And I've been working on this for a very long time. It's a very conservative business. It's a very complicated business. It's run on standards. It's run on lots and lots of years of engineering to build out how it actually works reliably. And so, when we started thinking about this, about using Hadera, there's a couple things. One is, from a technology standpoint, I realized that Hadera had the very highly scalable blockchain architecture that I needed. It has the governance aspects, and it has people behind it that have built real companies and that have real track records. So when I go to sell to very, very large utilities on the planet, it's about building the credibility of a team. And so we thought about it from a very holistic perspective. But it turns out that Hadera Hashgraph, for the purposes of using the Transactive piece, are highly scalable. It's very fast transaction speed. It's actually really, really secure. It's got bank grade security, as you guys say. And all these features are around building a global ecosystem that support our ability to take this out to a global market. We're going into many, many mission critical applications. And so that was very important.
Yeah, that is great to hear. And so you talk about, scalability, stability, the reputation of our team. Could you speak a little bit about how you actually found Hashgraph and got involved? I know you were a super early advisor before Hadera was even announced.
Yeah, so I got into this space not for crypto. I got into it for a pure play, where's the best blockchain? And I cycled through various technologies and somehow landed on calling up Mance and Lehman, and we had a bunch of conversations and realized very quickly that we could essentially integrate the Hadera. Initially, the original discussions were actually around using the asynchronous Byzantine fault-tolerant Hadera consensus algorithm, which was the most interesting part at the time. I was not aware at that time that there was going to be a coin and a Transactive piece, but I knew that if I was going to be selling to mission critical infrastructure players, that being able to have something that robust in the consensus side that can go into these asynchronous disconnected environments would give me an advantage from a technology standpoint. Then we thought about how we were going to build the underlying security blockchain, and we realized that actually we don't need a cryptocurrency at all for that. And so we decided to build our own pluggable blockchain where we can actually plug in Hashgraph consensus. We can actually change encryption. We can change other things to allow us to really meet the unique needs of various customers moving forward. So again, deep discussions with Mance and Lehman a couple years ago, decided to become an advisor, and then I was building this company in the background. And so again, I believe that for the purposes of how we're designing to use it, there's nothing else that would really compete with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And hearing you from a couple of years ago, when you still had this grand vision for delivering mission critical applications to governments, to large enterprise clients. How has it been to see, the announcement of Hadera, this governing concept with the Hadera Governing Council? And now that we've actually announced the first 5 council members, how is that helping you kind of, realize this vision for mission critical, super security focused applications?
Yeah, so it's a holistic approach that we're taking to build credibility with customers that we're going to be around for the long term. Our team has built successful software platforms and launched successful companies to exit over the past 25 years. We need to emulate that with all of our partners. So there's the governance issue. There's the fact that this is going to be governed. I know a lot of people like to think that everything is going to be, there's going to be 10,000, distributed nodes governing the bodies. I think that's not realistic in the first place. I think having a global presence, I know that there's been some issues around the patented piece, but now that Hadera is open, at least on the open public blockchain piece of it, that's not an issue. We are going to have to move down a path of meeting, we're going to have to meet standards and meet things that a lot of the people in the crypto space just sort of did not do in the first tranche of this business. So where blockchain is going is it's going to be more standardized, it's going to be more composable, there may be technologies that are patented. I think the idea that this has to scale and this has to sit in systems that might last for 30 years and their critical infrastructure is why I chose to partner with you guys, because what we're building, the pieces that we're building, cannot go into a mission critical infrastructure and then find out later that someone maybe truly isn't an open source project. Maybe they put some hooks into it. Maybe they did some things. We can't actually move the industry forward with those types of things. So I think what's happening that I see is there's a next generation of blockchain focused infrastructure that's going to get rolled out. And these are the types of technologies that are going to have to meet a lot more robust standards to be able to be deployed globally by some of these large players.
Yeah, absolutely. So I assume you're familiar with our council announcements. How does someone like Deutsche Telekom or Swisscom, who has been building these, mission critical applications for, all of Europe or for the Swiss government, how does that kind of validate what you're trying to achieve? Does it help you guys achieve your mission? Do you feel like they will provide guidance that is helpful for you guys in hoping to deliver, mission critical applications as well?
Of course, yes. I mean, I think for when we get into areas around where where the underlying networking architecture around fintech applications, we certainly see that as being a huge win for us. We'd like to see some more partners in some of the other spaces like the utilities and some of the other critical infrastructures. But initially having a group that can vouch for this and say, we're going to deploy this, we're going to be part of this, is really important on the enterprise side. Again, a lot of what's happened so far is it hasn't been what I call enterprise level deployments. I know that Hyperledger is really putting a lot of effort into really looking at the enterprise approach. I know Hadera Hashgraph is. There's a lot of other projects that are starting at very, very small levels that aren't integrating with some of the things that we need to do to really sell the enterprise customer. So I see that as a huge selling point for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear. And I think that you and the rest of our community is very much looking forward to, the next and subsequent groups of council member announcements. And hopefully we're going to be able to round out all those market segments for you.
I want to say that, now that I've said what I've said about this, the enterprise conservative mission critical architecture, I also got into this very, very early. I got into a highly decentralized energy grid 25 years ago because I saw the benefits of decentralization or basically a distributed architecture. So I'm a really big believer in what the crypto industry and the blockchain industry has been able to achieve. I would like to see a lot of the other players that have really pioneered this really getting more involved in what we're talking about and really moving this to the next level, because it's not, I don't think that there's a particular winner here. I think decentralized systems by nature are disruptive. And I really want to embrace everybody in the industry that wants to be part of this. I just think that we have to set some rules around governance and standards and things like that in order to really get the large players to make investments. And I think that's what I saw the same thing happen in solar energy. The first solar energy conference I went to was about 50 people back in the early 80s. And now that conference is one of the largest conferences on the planet. So I really think this industry is just starting. And these are the type of technologies, the ecosystems that I think we need to really work on to get the enterprise customers bought in. But we don't want to alienate the small businesses and the smaller customers and the people that really just want to innovate on the same side.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you there. 50 people sounds, 50 people to what it's grown to now sounds a lot like the crypto industry.
Well, sorry, but the whole decentralized crypto thing is, I mean, our dream really is to prove this out in military grade, mission critical infrastructures, but then offer this type of trusted, I believe that everybody would like to have a trusted, immutable, secure way of computing. And so we also believe that one of the strategies is to make sure we make this meet the requirements, just like how the internet was developed by the Department of Defense. We need to make this technology work really well, and then so that everybody can then have the benefit.
Yeah, obviously, definitely agree with you there. And there, there's some things that come along with that, like compliance, regulation. Having this fundamental scalability and security all seem, really critical to delivering on that vision. I think that there's just a few more questions that I have here. So this is kind of an interesting. So what's one thing that's not currently in Hadera's roadmap that you would like to see from us?
There's nothing. I guess the smart contracts is what I'd like to see, a little more extensibility around smart contracts that essentially could be disconnected from running off of Solidity, and maybe a unique multi-language smart contract capability. I don't think there's any issues with the open source piece. I know that some of the customers we work with, they clearly want to see some of the pieces open sourced. I don't know how that's going to change over time. I think to me, it's not a immediate requirement, but it'd be one thing to see how that plays out. I know that the Hadera Hashgraph consensus algorithm is patented for a reason, and I understand why, believe me. Other than that, really, there's nothing. I think what my concern right now is getting the industry and the ecosystem to start building real enterprise-grade systems, getting them launched. I think we'll definitely come up with all kinds of bells and whistles and things we didn't think of that we want to change. But that's really not the challenge right now. I think the challenge now is getting these out into customer deployments and showing the value that this works at the enterprise level.
Yeah, that's great insights. Totally agree with you there. And just to comment on that, you did say that some of your customers or people you work with, like the Department of Energy, could be concerned about the fact that Hashgraph is not open source or Hadera is not open source. But Hadera's entire code base will be open review. Just for anyone watching this, everyone in the world will be able to compile it, verify that it's running as appropriate, read through it, make sure there's nothing funky with the code or that it's working properly. And so hopefully that is something that does sway the opinions of those people who are hesitant to use something that isn't fully open source. So how else have you been involved in the decentralized / blockchain space in the past few years? Is there anything that you'd like to talk about there?
Yeah, so I was part of the IOTA Foundation. I got involved with Hyperledger. I got involved with Hadera. I've been involved with different types of projects. And I also saw that one of the values of the whole ecosystem around having the Ethereum ecosystem around building out the ability for people to do token offerings and things like that were a good idea. I never understood the concept of the ICO though. There's one of the things that I've never been part of other than as an advisor to some ICOs, but I didn't, when I launched my own company, I never thought about the concept of ICO, mainly because if you're going to change the universe and change everything to a new paradigm of how we're going to fund companies and how we still have to follow the rules. And so there's regulations and there's regulatory aspects of this. You can tokenize equity, you can tokenize all different types of things, debt. I don't think that I've never seen a company yet, I know this is a bold statement, but I have not seen a utility token yet. Because the idea of everybody wants to build utility tokens, but unless you're a currency and the SEC says you're not actually a security, then I think it's very suspect. So I believe that what's happening with securitization of tokens and using blockchain and the ecosystem to do this is going to be game changing. My intuition all along was that was not really a proper place to go. But I did see the inherent value of the blockchain underneath. And I think the token economy is going to be way, way larger than anyone understands. It's just that it has to fit into the appropriate structure to make it work right. So I'm a really big fan of the concept of the token economy. I don't necessarily think we're going to have hundreds and thousands of currencies floating around like some people. But I believe that blockchain, the underlying game changer of blockchain, is going to be the next generation internet protocol. And that's why I got into it, and that's why I'm so excited about the future. I do think that what we're doing is addressing something that I really do not hear very few people talking about, which is that if you have a very secure blockchain running on an unsecure computer network, it's hackable. And that's causing some people to look at this whole industry and give it a bad name. And I think what we need to do is change the viewpoints on being able to explain, instead of just saying statements like, if you use blockchain, you're completely safe. You should say, here's an intelligent way how to deploy this technology. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to build around the value proposition of our company. So again, Hashgraph brings in that credibility that if we're going to use the digital wallet capabilities and use the ability to transact, this is a technology that's going to allow us to do this safely. And it shouldn't have anything to do with how distributed it is right now. It's more to do with, does the technology work? I do think that Hadera, Hashgraph, has the ultimate capability to be super highly distributed, more so than others, because of the fact that you're going around globally trying to explain yourselves. And my experience with early Hashgraph and early when Hadera was launched was that you had all these people coming in that were expecting overnight changes, their Lambos and everything. And it was what I was really impressed with is that we were on the same wavelength, is that you guys were completely just moving on stealthily underneath, building good technology, working on the real problems at hand, and not letting that information really influence how you're going to move into the market. So really uniquely, I think Hadera was really the first one to really kind of build that messaging around, let's do this correctly. Let's not respond to the outward markets.
Well, I really, really appreciate that feedback, and I'm sure the rest of the team would be as well. With our global council members being separated all around the world, with our audience, our community being all around the world, our network being all the way around the world, it's really great to hear that as well. So I think that's it as far as questions that I have. Is there anything that you would like to speak about specifically while I still have you here?
No, I think that if anybody within the Hadera Hashgraph ecosystem is interested in a little bit further about how we're combining technologies, I'd be glad to talk further about that. My email is dave@taekion.com. But that's it for me. I really appreciate, Cooper, you taking the time to listen to the story, and looking forward to working with Hadera Hashgraph in the future on a lot of different projects.